So a big new feature in macOS Ventura is Stage Manager. Stage Manager is a new way to multitask. It deals with situations like this. I've got lots of windows open here, all crowding the desktop. And in previous versions of macOS, and still in macOS Ventura, I can use features like Mission Control to create multiple desktop spaces and move those windows to multiple desktops. I could also simply hide or minimize various windows to manage this. And you can still do all of that. Stage Manager, though, is a new tool that you could try. So I'm going to go to Control Center here and turn on Stage Manager. And right away you're going to see that I'm down to just one window here. Just Safari, the one that was at the top. All the other windows appear here on the left. These are what are called app sets. And I can go to another app set by simply clicking on it. So if I want to switch to Mail, I click and notice how Mail comes up here now and Safari takes its place on the left. So I can focus on one window or a set of windows in an app at a time. If I go to Safari here and I actually create a new window and I have a second Safari window open, then both of those windows are now part of that app set. You can see I've got two windows right here. I can go back and see both of those. So this makes it much easier to handle. I still have all of these windows here open on this desktop, but it's only going to show me these as full size, and these are going to be live previews. I can see actually what's here. These aren't just icons. And I could jump to them really easily and it neatly places the other one away. It's basically combining both a bring to front and minimize action at the same time. As a matter of fact, if you minimize, it actually puts it back in the Stage Manager left sidebar rather than in the dock if you're using Stage Manager. So it's a really handy way to deal with lots of different windows. A lot of things you should know. First, you can still position these however you want. So I can make this Mail window take up a lot of space here. And you can see it remembers. If I go back to Mail, it remembers exactly where it was. I could use the whole left side here. If I just move this over enough, those go away. But I'm still using Stage Manager. It's still there. Matter of fact, if I were to move my pointer over to the left side, they all pop out and I can easily jump to another one like that. So you could definitely use the entire screen. You don't have to leave the left side open like that. You could also group things together. Let's say I wanted to have text edit and Mail at the same time. Instead of clicking on this, I can drag this. And now these two windows are open here and they're part of the same app set. So I could easily switch between them as I normally would. And watch what happens if I go to, say, Safari here. Those two windows go in here and I have two icons because this is text edit and Mail together. And I could now click there to open those both up. And you could use lots of drag and drop gestures here to do different things. So I could go in here and drag one of these windows over. And now I've got Mail and Safari together like that and text edit by itself. You can play around with doing that to kind of control what is in each app set. You can also use all of the same app switching things you did before. So sure, I could click here to go to reminders, but if I were to use the app switcher command tab and switch to reminders, it does it for me. And if I were to launch reminders or say like launch notes, I forget that notes is running and I launch notes, it just uses app switcher there to get to it. So you can actually have more than 4 of these. You may actually already see more depending upon the height of your screen. These are just going to be the most recently used ones here, but the list can actually go on and you can use app switcher or relaunch an app or whatever you want to actually switch to the various different things here. You don't have to use this. There are some settings here. If we go to system settings, we actually have system settings running right here. You go to desktop and dock and then you've got Stage Manager, an on-off switch. It's the same switch that we had here. And by the way, if you want easier access to this, you could drag this into the menu bar and then you have access to the switch, Stage Manager settings, and you could use option click to turn Stage Manager on and off. Customize here in system settings allows you to determine whether or not this stuff on the side is there by default. So I could have it always off. It appears if I put my pointer to the left, but I could have it always on there. So if you like Stage Manager but you don't like the sidebar action here, you could turn that off. Also notice there's a switch for desktop items. Let's go back in here and notice I don't see any items on the desktop. However, there are two files on the desktop. And if I click on the desktop, two things happen. First, I can see the actual items, whether they're hard drives or network servers or files that are in your desktop folder. I can get back to those by simply clicking on the desktop background. But if I'm using an app like that, then the desktop is clean. So it's another thing Stage Manager does for you. And it's nice because if you click on the desktop, it puts everything back on the left there. There isn't one active app set. But in System Preferences, you can turn that off. So I can turn this to where I actually have the two items there. I can see them. And clicking on the desktop doesn't do anything special. And you've got Show Windows from Application All at Once or one at a time. Before we switch that on, let's go in here and let's set this up. I'm going to set up Mail in its own thing, and I've got two Safari windows here. Now let's go and let's close this one here. And I'm going to open up a new Safari window. And you can see this one goes away. And if I click here, it shows me the windows one at a time. And you see how it groups the two Safari windows together. They're two together, but clicking on it only shows me one. I click and it goes to the next one. And we'll cycle through if there's three or more as well. So really another way, kind of what some users like to refer to as single window mode all the time. Now what happens if you are going to use multiple desktops? I'm going to use Control up arrow and add another desktop space using Mission Control. And let's drag Mail over here and Reminders. And let's return to desktop one. And notice I only have three app sets now. This one and then Notes and Text Edit. And if I move over to the second desktop, I've got two. I've got Reminders and Mail, and I can switch between those. So the app sets work within each desktop space. And you could use them like that. Also note that if you only have one app set, for instance, let's quit Reminders here. And now I only have this one app set here in this desktop. It works just like a regular desktop. There's not a second app window, so it's not going to actually do anything different than if you had Stage Manager turned off. But if I were to launch a second app and have a second app window there, it immediately goes into Stage Manager mode. So it works like you would expect in a lot of cases. So I'd encourage you to try out Stage Manager. And if you think it could be useful to you, give it more than just a quick test. Try using it for several days. It seems like it's the kind of feature where you have to get used to it to really determine whether or not it's something that will help your productivity. Because you've been used to using, say, multiple desktop spaces or simply switching between apps or shuffling windows around. So you're going to be good at that already. Stage Manager may improve things, but not right away because it's different and it takes some time to adjust. And keep in mind also that this is a new feature and it works the same way on the iPad. So in iPadOS 16, this is probably going to become the primary way how people multitask on the iPad because the previous ways of multitasking haven't really been good or widely adopted by people. So if you go back and forth between using a Mac and using an iPad, then Stage Manager could be a great way to basically multitask with one method between both devices without having to do it one way on your Mac and do it a completely different way on your iPad.